Russia, Russia, Russia.
Do you have your Canary Cry calendar out, Gons?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything marked for today?
Feast of Trumpets. 1901, Monsanto was founded.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Combo.
So Feast of Trumpets and the day Monsanto was founded?
Apparently, yeah.
Look at those. This two. What other calendar would have those two things?
True.
On the calendar? Well, I am putting a call out. I think there's still time to adjust this year's calendar coming out in December. If you want the Canary Cry calendar, it's the most treasured piece of Canary Cry memorabilia that comes out every year. This will be the third one. I have one to add on to it, Gons.
Okay.
This is first reported by Vox. We're going to read the Mirror here on MSN. And it says, 36 years ago today, one man saved us from world-ending nuclear war.
Just one man?
Dun, dun. One man. One man stood between us and complete annihilation. You want to learn about this guy?
Yes. Tell me.
Okay. So listen up, calendar producers. I think this one will be worth putting on the calendar. On September 26th, 1983, the planet came terrifyingly close to a nuclear holocaust. The Soviet Union's missile attack early warning system displayed in large red letters the word launch. A computer screen stated to the officer on duty, Soviet Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, that it could say with high reliability that an American intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, had been launched and was headed towards the Soviet Union. First, it was just one missile, but then another and another, until the system reported that a total of 5 Minuteman ICBMs had been launched. Quote, Petrov had to make a decision. Would he report an incoming American strike? My then colleague Max Fisher explained, quote, if he did, Soviet nuclear doctrine called for a full nuclear retaliation. There would be no time to double-check the warning system, much less seek negotiations with the U.S. Reporting it would have made a certain degree of sense. The Reagan administration had a far more hardline stance against the Soviets than the Carter, Ford, or Nixon administrations before it. Months earlier, President Reagan had announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, mockingly dubbed Star Wars, a plan to shoot down ballistic missiles before they reached the U.S.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this by Reagan.
Yes, Star Wars has been a big part of our career.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And not the movies, the big part of our sort of childhoods. But no, the government program Star Wars, we've talked about a lot. Yeah. And his administration was in the process of deploying Pershing II nuclear-armed missiles to West Germany and Great Britain, which were capable of striking the Soviet Union. There were reasons for Petrov to think Reagan's brinksmanship had escalated to an actual nuclear exchange. But Petrov did not report the incoming strike. He and others on his staff concluded that what they were seeing was a false alarm, and it was. The system mistook the sun's reflection off clouds for a missile. Petrov prevented a nuclear war between the Soviets, who had 35,804 nuclear warheads in 1983, and the U.S., which had 23,305. A 1979 report by Congress's Office of Technology and Assessment estimated that a full-scale Soviet assault on U.S. would kill 35 to 77% of the U.S. population, or between 82 million and 180 million people in 1983.
Wow.
The inevitable U.S. counterstrike would kill 20 to 40% of the Soviet population, or between 54 million and 108 million people. The combined death toll there, between 136 and 288 million, swamps the death toll of any war, genocide, or other violent catastrophe in human history. Proportional to world population, it would be rivaled only by the An Lushan Rebellion in 8th century China and the Mongol conquest of the 13th century. And it's likely hundreds of millions more would have died once the conflict disrupted global temperatures and severely hampered agriculture. International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War put the potential death toll from starvation at about 2 billion. Wow. So this, we've actually mentioned this guy before, but today, the 26th of September, was the day that old Stanislav Petrov, saved the world by doing what, Gons?
Rebel.
By not following orders.
Rebel.
By questioning authority, and by taking just a second to think for himself and not do what he was supposed to do, which is report this error on the radar.
Did he know it was an error?
No.
Are you sure?
He did not. Yeah, he did later.
Okay. So what prompted him to not do it before if he knew that he was probably going to die if he doesn't say anything?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So we've talked about this guy. There's some very interesting full historical examinations of this guy. Now, I will say, in this Vox article, they mention Stanislav Petrov, the most famous guy who's done this, but it also has a subheadline: Petrov isn't the only man who's prevented nuclear war. There was another Russian guy in 1962, Vasily Arkhipov, who did a similar thing. There was a guy in 1995 who had a very similar experience as well. This has happened repeatedly over the past 60 years where, if people, specifically Russians, and I think that's part of the propaganda going on here at Vox, specifically Russians, there is a whole handful of Russians who, if they had followed orders, done what they're supposed to do, not questioned authority, not questioned the system, the world would have ended like 4 or 5 times over. And so today, I think it's important for us to remember that the only reason I think any of us are here today, besides the grace and will of the Lord, is Russians questioning the authority. And not just Russians. I think the Russians are getting pointed out here on Vox because, of course, the American media is trying to inspire modern day Russians to rebel against authority. Of course, Putin is currently, as we speak, drafting 300,000 Russian men to go fight in Ukraine. There's stories about recruitment centers, which are not recruitment centers. They're forced draft centers in Russia, experiencing violence and some real rebellion going on over there in Russia.
So is Vox saying that there are very fine Russians?
There's very fine people on both sides, is what Vox is here saying.
That's kind of what they're saying. So.
It absolutely is what they're saying. Yeah. We're obviously trying to inspire more Russians to turn against their leaders there in order to save the world. But it is good to remember that multiple times in this world where we are at least led to believe that we are constantly on the edge of annihilation by our own hands, that it is, thankful. We should be thankful, to the Lord for inspiring the idea of disrespecting authority in key moments of world history.
I can see Vox and the West here highlighting the rebellion as a good thing. You think about Lucifer and the rebellion against God. He's the good guy.
I see where you're going.
Because here's the thing: there are other people doing things against authority. God,
I'll tell you that.
Yeah. This is Yahoo News. This is Mirroring USA Today. This just popped in right before we went live here. Putin grants Russian citizenship to U.S. fugitive Edward Snowden.
Oh,
Yeah, a little trade, like, hey, you guys can have the old timer with the nukes. We'll get the new cyber pandemic guy.
So that's it. That's got an interesting comparison. Some might say, and it depends on if you're a politician, what year it is. They flip-flop on this all the time. But some might say Edward Snowden and his rebellion against authority has had its own sort of world-saving effect.
Yeah. Interesting. It says
Interesting connection.
Former U.S. security contractor Edward Snowden, a fugitive of American authorities who has been living in Russia since 2013, was granted Russian citizenship by President Vladimir Putin on Monday at a time of high tension between the countries because of the war in Ukraine. Putin signed a decree Monday conferring citizenship to 75 foreign nationals, including Snowden, who was wanted in the U.S. after leaking classified documents detailing government surveillance programs. He received permanent Russian residency in 2020. All right, so there you go. It's official now. He's been hiding out for a while.
Edward Snowden is officially a Russian citizen. This is quite the psychological operation for a large group of Americans.
Yeah, of course.
Edward Snowden, of course, at first, and there's still people who think this, but at first was considered pretty roundly by our officials, the authorities, to be a terrorist,
right?
To be an anti-American terrorist. Since then, it's been sort of a roller coaster of opinion about Snowden, but any free-thinking person not sort of shackled by the chains of unreasonable patriotism or nationalism. Some call Edward Snowden a patriot for what he did, for fighting, for revealing the tyranny of a now tyrannical digital panopticon government. Well, Russia, you've done it again. You've confused us all.
It feels like the only analogy I can think of with all this, and we got to get that New World Order Fantasy League going, because it's almost like these countries are just teams, and then they got players or assets, like all these different
do trades.
They do trades and they do swaps and, contracts, and, it's just interesting, like a macrocosm.
It's a good life lesson. We have the entire U.S. Fourth Estate, the media, doing everything they can to make sure that Putin is considered sort of a Hitler type.
Right.
And look, we're not saying we support the war. We absolutely do not support the war. But what we do is analyze news and deconstruct the media. And when you do that, it's obvious that the U.S. media wants to create a narrative, paint a picture.
Yeah, paint a picture.
And it's even more confusing when Putin comes to the rescue of one of the most beloved American patriotic Robin Hood characters. While, Trump was elected on the promise he was going to pardon Snowden. I believe Biden even mentioned it. Politicians flip-flop all the time on this. And yet nobody has ever done anything about it, except for Putin. What a confusing day.
Look at that. Look at
this could
Putin.
be. Does it say the actual date that
he said Monday? It says Monday here.
Today.
Yeah, today. So literally today is just a monumental September 26th. Will go down in history as a
big day.
Continued unraveling or the revealing of the whole system here.
Something. Yeah. It's like anti-authority day or something.
Anti-authority celebration day.
So Edward Snowden getting Russian citizenship and Stanislav Petrov saving the world by not respecting his authorities.
The Russian authorities. Yeah.
Yeah. That should be on the calendar.
Yeah,
putting it there now.
100%.